Across centuries, men have gathered in secret chambers, behind closed doors, under the banner of brotherhood, secret societies, private clubs, shadow networks, from Freemasons to Ivy League orders, from medieval guilds to modern fraternities. Outwardly, they claim purpose, charity, loyalty, tradition. But beneath the symbols and the oaths lies something unspoken, a shared understanding of power. And at the heart of that power lies knowledge of women. Here is the paradox. In public, men pretend not to understand women. They joke about confusion, about mystery, about the impossible task of pleasing them. But in private, among themselves, men study women carefully. They pass down lessons of attraction, loyalty, manipulation, and control. Lessons they would never speak aloud in polite company, because to admit them would reveal the game. Tonight, we open that vault, not to glorify it, not to excuse it, but to expose it. Because once you see the rules, you cannot unsee them. And when women understand what is whispered in the shadows, they can flip the script, reclaim the power, and use the knowledge against those who thought it belonged to them alone. The origins of men's secret societies. Men have always gathered in circles of exclusion. In ancient Greece, the symposia were nights of wine and discussion, but beneath the philosophy lay rules of dominance. In medieval Europe, guilds decided who controlled money and influence, and women were almost never allowed. In the Renaissance, secret orders like the Rosicrucians and later the Freemasons wrapped themselves in ritual and symbol. What united them? Two things: secrecy and hierarchy. Secrecy created allure. Hierarchy created loyalty. Women were deliberately excluded, not because men believed women had nothing to offer, but because men understood women represented the greatest threat to loyalty. Women could bend ambition, redirect attention, and topple alliances. The very act of exclusion was an admission of their fear. By the 18th and 19th centuries, Freemasons, Illuminists, and countless lesser-known orders spread across Europe and America. Their symbols hinted at eternity, wisdom, and virtue. But behind the lofty ideals, their discussions often returned to the same topics: wealth, influence, and women. They asked, how do you protect yourself from being weakened by desire? How do you control inheritance, marriage, alliances, and the dangers of seduction? These were not side issues. They were central. Law 1. Men fear. Female influence more than male rivalry. In private, men confess what they deny in public, that women unsettle them more than other men. Male rivalry is expected. It follows a pattern: competition, challenge, victory, defeat. But female influence is different. It bypasses strength and strikes at the will itself. A man may face an enemy on the battlefield, but in the bedroom, at the table, in the whispered intimacy of seduction, his armor collapses. That is why secret societies place such emphasis on loyalty oaths, rituals of purity, and warnings against outside influence. The outside influence is always code for women, not because they are weak, but because they are too strong. A rival can be fought. A woman can make a man forget he was supposed to fight at all. History is filled with examples. Kings undone not by battles, but by mistresses. Politicians ruined not by rivals, but by scandals involving women. The brotherhoods knew this. They taught their members to guard themselves, to mistrust charm, to control inheritance by controlling women's roles, and in doing so, they revealed their fear. They feared not women's weakness, but women's ability to redirect power. Or 2. Desire is a chain. In the manuals of secret brotherhoods, explicit or implied, runs the same theme. A man bound by desire is no longer free. His decisions are not his own. His judgment bends. That is why so many societies created rituals of abstinence or temporary celibacy. It was not about virtue. It was about strategy. Consider the Knights Templar. Outwardly a religious order, inwardly a brotherhood of warriors and bankers. Their rules forbade intimacy, not because intimacy was evil, but because desire creates vulnerability. A man obsessed with a woman will betray secrets. He will redirect wealth. He will abandon duty. The Templars knew this truth. The most dangerous prison is not stone walls, but longing. Later, in Victorian gentlemen's clubs, the same theme emerged. Men gathered to smoke, drink, and plot. Wives were excluded, mistresses invisible. Why? Because desire cannot be controlled in the presence of its object. The very absence of women was a silent acknowledgement. Here, at least, ambition would not be diverted by perfume, glances, or whispers. But what men rarely admit is this: if desire is a chain, then women are the smiths. They can craft, lengthen, or break it at will. The societies told men to avoid the chain. They never admitted that those who understand the chain best are the women who hold it. Law. 3. The mask of respectability. Publicly, these societies spoke of virtue. They wrapped themselves in religion, philosophy, philanthropy. They declared they sought enlightenment, brotherhood, progress. But in private, their concern was always leverage. How do you secure loyalty? How do you protect wealth from women who might marry into it? How do you use women's allure when it serves you, and dismiss it when it threatens you? That is why so many secret societies insisted their members marry within approved circles. That is why dowries, inheritances, and alliances were carefully arranged. The respectable mask hid the raw fear that a single woman could unbalance the scales more than a dozen rivals. The Freemasons, for example, spoke in symbols of light, balance, and order. Yet the jokes told in lodges often revealed another layer: warnings about wives, about mistresses, about the dangers of indulgence. Respectability was a mask. Behind it lay confession, that women were the invisible participants in every decision, even when barred from the room. A hidden confession. When men gather in secret, when they lock the doors and swear oaths of loyalty, when they invent symbols and rituals to bind themselves together, what are they admitting? That their strength alone is not enough. That they fear the invisible influence more than open rivalry. That they must create walls because they cannot control what happens when walls are absent. Every secret society is a confession that women, even when excluded, remain central. That desire, charm, seduction, or silence can undo all their oaths. And so while men claim to rule, they spend centuries building defenses against the very women they pretend not to fear. This is the code they never say aloud, but it runs like a current through their rituals, their exclusions, their warnings. And once you see it, history itself looks different. Empires fell not only from wars and treaties, but from whispered influence. Thrones shook not only from armies, but from mistresses, queens, and courtesans. And in the lodges, the brothers knew it. Case Study 1. The Freemasons. Perhaps no secret brotherhood has inspired more fascination than the Freemasons. Cloaked in symbols, oaths, and rituals, they spread across Europe and America during the 18th and 19th centuries. Publicly, they preached philanthropy and moral refinement. Privately, their lodges were centers of networking. Men advancing careers, arranging deals and securing alliances. Women were excluded, not simply because of tradition, but because they represented volatility. In lodge documents and diaries, members wrote of the dangers of influence. They meant that a man devoted to a mistress or manipulated by a wife might betray the brotherhood. They feared pillow talk more than politics. A rival might bribe you, but a lover might unmake you. The paradox is striking. The Masons built entire temples to safeguard their power. Yet what they feared most was not an army, but a whisper from a woman. And so their very exclusion of women was an admission. Power could be bent by intimacy more than by threats. Case Study 2. The Skull and Bones Society. At Yale University, an elite secret order formed in the 19th century, Skull and Bones. Its members became presidents, senators, bankers, and industrial leaders. Their rituals were shrouded in mystery. Their initiation described as theatrical and binding. What is less discussed is how they treated women. For decades, women were barred. The logic mirrored the older lodges. Ambition must be trained without distraction. Bonesmen swore loyalty not only to each other, but to secrecy itself. And what did secrecy protect? Above all, conversations about how to control inheritance, legacy, and reputation. And central to those concerns were women, who to marry, who to avoid, how to prevent scandal. It was not ignorance of women, but obsession with them that drove exclusion. The bonesmen knew that one affair, one betrayal, one entanglement could topple a dynasty faster than political rivalry. They built their secrecy as armor against what they feared most: the unpredictable influence of desire. Law 4. Women as gatekeepers of legacy. Across societies, one theme repeats. Men believe they build legacies through ambition, but in private they admit women are the gatekeepers. Through marriage, lineage, inheritance, and scandal, women decide whether a name endures or vanishes. Why were dowries negotiated in lodges? Why were heirs' marriages strategized in private chambers? Because brothers understood that empire is built not only in parliaments, but in bedrooms. A poorly chosen wife could ruin fortune. A mistress turned rival could expose secrets. A woman who demanded too much could strip wealth bare. And so in their manuals and minutes, they advised caution, discipline, detachment. They never said this in public speeches. To admit it would be to admit that women, not men, hold the final gate to legacy. But in the shadows they trained each other to manage that truth. And women who understood this, queens, courtesans, strategists, flipped it. They became the arbiters of destiny, bending dynasties with a smile. Case Study 3. The Gentlemen's Clubs of London. In 19th century London, the most powerful decisions were not made in Parliament, but in clubs like White's and Brooks's. Behind polished wood and candlelight, aristocrats wagered fortunes, whispered alliances, and plotted marriages. The rules were strict. No women allowed. On the surface, this exclusion looks like arrogance, but in truth, It was defense. These men feared that the presence of women would redirect the rhythm of the club. Conversation would bend, secrets might slip, loyalties might fracture, and so they created spaces where they pretended women did not exist. Even as every discussion returned to them, they debated dowries, mistresses, scandals. They strategized how to prevent entanglements from leaking into politics, and still, women infiltrated, not physically, but through absence. A mistress's demands, a wife's influence, a courtesan's charm haunted every cigar-smoked conversation. The silence around women was never silence at all. It was obsession disguised as exclusion. Law 5. Scandal is more dangerous than defeat. In brotherhood teachings, one warning repeats like scripture: fear scandal more than defeat. Defeat can be explained, scandal cannot. And scandal almost always involved women. Consider how many dynasties fell not through war, but through whispers. A king with too many mistresses, a politician exposed by an affair, a banker ruined by a courtesan's betrayal. The brotherhoods knew this. They taught members to guard correspondence, to conceal affairs, to control mistresses with money or exile. The fear was not moral, it was strategic. Scandal destroys faster than battle. And yet, in fearing scandal, they confess something else: that women could weaponize intimacy. One smile could extract a secret. One disappearance could ignite obsession. One rumor could topple empires. Men taught each other to beware, but women who mastered the art of scandal wielded it as sword. History erases their names, but their shadows remain. Case Study 4. The Rosicrucians and the Mask of Wisdom. The Rosicrucian order, half myth, half reality, claimed to guard ancient knowledge. They wrapped themselves in alchemy, medicine, and mystery. But behind the lofty symbolism lay human weakness. Their writings often warned of feminine distraction, of illusions that could divert seekers from enlightenment. What they meant was simpler. Men undone by desire reveal their secrets, and so their rituals of purity were not mystical at all. They were practical. A man chained to longing cannot guard wisdom. The brotherhood framed this as spiritual danger, but it was fear of seduction. Their symbols spoke of roses and crosses, but their fear was always the same: that a woman could bend their will without lifting a blade. A pattern emerges. Across Freemasons, Skull and Bones, London clubs and Rosicrucians, the pattern is clear. Men feared women not because they misunderstood them, but because they understood them too well. They built walls, rituals, exclusions, and codes as defense against what they could not resist. And yet the very need for defense was proof. The power they sought to hide from was already greater than the symbols they carved. Every secret society whispers the same confession. Women were not excluded because they were irrelevant. They were excluded because they were central. The conditioning code, passed from brother to brother, was not about enlightenment. It was about resistance. Resistance to the allure, the influence, the inevitable power of women. Case Study 5. The Jesuit Order. While not always called a secret society, the Jesuits functioned with secrecy, loyalty oaths, and coded communication that rivaled any Masonic lodge. Founded in the 16th century, they became advisors, confessors, and educators to kings. Their influence stretched across continents. And what did they teach their members? Guard yourself against women. In Jesuit manuals, members were warned about the danger of feminine influence on confession. Why? Because a woman who listens with care can disarm more quickly than an enemy who threatens with force. Jesuits feared not weapons, but intimacy. They trained members to maintain composure even in moments of temptation. The very rules of discipline reveal the unspoken belief: women could break vows with nothing but presence. Case study 6. The Bohemian Club. Fast forward to California in the late 19th century. Powerful men of politics, finance, and art gathered in redwood forests under the banner of the Bohemian Club. Presidents, tycoons, and cultural leaders attended. Their motto, "Weaving spiders, come not here," a warning against business deals. But the deeper code was about distraction. At the Bohemian Grove, women were excluded entirely. Officially, it was to protect privacy, but members admitted privately that women redirected ambition. Business became gossip. Secrets became whispers. Ambition became entanglement. And so, even in the heart of America's rise, men reenacted the same ritual: exclude women, pretend they do not exist, while knowing that their absence haunted every gathering. The paradox was alive again. The most powerful men in America gathered to escape the influence of those they claimed were powerless, and in escaping, they confessed their fear. Law 6. Information is seduction. In every brotherhood, one lesson repeats: secrets are currency. And who extracts secrets best? Not rivals, not armies, but women. From pillow talk to whispered confidences, from listening in silence to asking a single piercing question, women draw information that men guard against kings. This is why secret societies emphasize silence, oaths, coded speech. They warned members, guard yourself most in intimacy. Do not reveal too much. Do not let comfort disarm you, because history proved the pattern. Empires fell when men spoke too freely in the presence of women who seemed harmless. Information flows where attraction lives, and once spoken, it cannot be unsaid. The irony is sharp. Men built elaborate rituals to protect their words. Women needed none. A smile, a pause, a silence. And men volunteered what armies could not take. This is what secret societies whispered in their warnings, but never admitted publicly. The greatest seduction is not physical. It is informational. Case study 7. The fraternities of the early 20th century. By the 1900s, American fraternities had become training grounds for future elites. Beneath the rituals and hazing, their purpose was networking. And always the lesson of women was woven into the rules. Fraternities often restricted female visitors, banned women from certain meetings, or mocked members who became too attached. Why? Because attachment, they believed, weakens ambition. Yet at the same time, they created entire reputations around who could attract women most easily. Desire was both celebrated and feared. A man admired for conquests was also warned. Too much desire makes you vulnerable. Too much entanglement ruins prospects. The hypocrisy was obvious, but the message was consistent. Women represent both the ultimate reward and the ultimate risk. Law 7. Respect is more fragile than wealth. Secret societies understood that wealth could be rebuilt, but respect, once lost, rarely returned. And the surest way to lose respect in their eyes? Being controlled by a woman. To be seen as ruled by desire was to be dismissed. This is why societies mocked henpecked husbands, why they scorned leaders ruined by scandal. They taught their members, control women, or they will control you. This is the unspoken code. Men do not respect other men who cannot resist women. It is not moral judgment, but strategic hierarchy. A man undone by scandal is not trusted with secrets. A man ruled by obsession cannot lead. The brotherhoods trained this ruthlessly. Resist or be diminished. But the truth behind it is clear. They feared not women's weakness, but their strength. Case Study 8. The Bilderberg Group. Modern times bring modern societies. The Bilderberg Group, founded in the 20th century, gathers politicians, bankers, and thinkers annually. Officially, it is about dialogue and strategy. But beneath the surface, it repeats the same patterns. Women were included only late and sparingly. The early gatherings were male-dominated. Discussions framed in secrecy. Why the secrecy? Because power bends where intimacy interferes. Even now, participants admit the fear of exposure. A careless word, a personal scandal, could overshadow entire strategies. And at the center of those fears are not economic charts, but human entanglements, a mistress, a rumor, a leak through intimacy. These undo reputations faster than failed policies. The Bilderberg secrecy is framed as political necessity, but it echoes centuries of brotherhood confessions. The greatest danger is not always the rival across the table. It is the woman who hears what should not be spoken. Law 8. Detachment protects power. If the brotherhoods teach one survival rule, it is detachment. Do not cling. Do not need. Do not let desire dictate decisions. The Knights Templar practiced abstinence. The Freemasons warned against indulgence. The Ivy League orders mocked attachment. Again and again, detachment is praised as shield. But the mirror is this. Women who master detachment are unstoppable. When a woman refuses to be ruled by need, she terrifies men more than any secret oath. Secret societies trained men to resist women. They never prepared for women who had already trained themselves. Detachment is the hidden equalizer. It makes loyalty voluntary, not forced, and voluntary loyalty is always stronger. A hidden consistency. From Jesuits to Bohemian Club, from fraternities to Bilderberg, the message is unchanged. Men fear scandal more than war, intimacy more than rivalry, desire more than defeat. They cloak this fear in rituals, exclusions, warnings. But every warning is a confession that women hold the keys to influence, that their silence is more dangerous than speeches, that their presence is more destabilizing than armies. This is what they do not say aloud. They build temples, write oaths, light candles, chant words, but all of it circles back to one truth. The most dangerous force in any society is not the brotherhood itself. It is the woman they tried to exclude. Case Study 9. The Mafia and the Code of Silence. Not all secret brotherhoods wore robes or held rituals in candlelit lodges. Some wore suits and carried guns. The Mafia, from Sicily to New York, operated under rules just as strict as any Masonic lodge. Loyalty, silence, hierarchy. At the core of their fear was betrayal, and betrayal often came through women. Mafia codes warned members against talking on the pillow. They knew that even the hardest men revealed secrets when softened by intimacy. Wives were kept at a distance from business. Mistresses were managed carefully, often paid off, silenced, or removed if they became liabilities. The brutality was not random. It was fear turned into violence. The men who ran the underworld knew that their empire could collapse, not from bullets, but from whispers in bed. The irony is sharp. The most feared men in the world confessed, through their paranoia, that they were never truly in control. Their silence was a shield not against rivals, but against the women who could undo them without firing a shot. Case study 10. Corporate inner circles. Today, the new brotherhoods gather not in temples, but in boardrooms, executive retreats, invite-only conferences, shareholder dinners, modern lodges without the candles. And yet, the same exclusions linger. Deals are made at golf courses, at men-only dinners, in private spaces where women are subtly or explicitly absent. Why? Because the conditioning code has not changed. Men believe that to remain serious, they must remove the influence of women. They fear distraction. They fear scandal. They fear that ambition will be diverted by intimacy. But beneath the excuses lies the same confession as centuries past. Women are not irrelevant. They are too relevant. Their presence shifts the rhythm, changes the stakes, alters the balance. And still, even in their absence, women define the game. Marriages, divorces, affairs, reputations, all of it shapes the corporate ladder. Men pretend to plan in private, but what they plan for, above all, is how to manage the influence of women. Law 9. Secrecy is always about fear. Every oath, every ritual, every exclusion can be reduced to one truth. Secrecy is not about power, it is about fear. Men do not exclude women because they dismiss them. They exclude them because they fear what they cannot control. The greatest rival is predictable. The greatest influence is not. And so secrecy builds walls, not against armies, but against intimacy. This is why secrecy is intoxicating. It acknowledges danger without naming it. It binds men together, not because of what they know, but because of what they fear. And what they fear, at the root, is the woman who can undo them with a glance. Law 10. The whisper outlasts the oath. Men believe oaths bind them forever, but history proves otherwise. Oaths are forgotten, broken, betrayed. What outlasts them is the whisper. A whisper in a bedroom, in a court, in a market. A whisper can bring down kings, topple corporations, destroy dynasties. The whisper is almost always feminine. Secret societies train men to guard themselves against whispers. Do not reveal too much. Do not trust too deeply. Do not surrender to charm. But their warnings are proof of what they fear. The whisper is the real law, the real force, the real power. And no lodge, no oath, no ritual can silence it. Case study 11. The digital brotherhoods. In the 21st century, secret societies have gone digital. Online forums, encrypted chats, invite-only networks. They operate with the same logic as the lodges of old. Exclude, encrypt, create hierarchy. And still, women are treated as outsiders. Sometimes mocked, sometimes fetishized, always feared. Why? Because even in the digital age, the same truth applies. A man's rival online is predictable, but intimacy is not. Scandal spreads faster than policy. A leak from a personal entanglement destroys faster than a hack. The modern brotherhoods are obsessed with security, with encryption, with codes. But behind the firewalls is the same confession. They fear what cannot be coded. The human influence. the feminine influence. Law. 11. Influence is inescapable. Here is the final law. Influence cannot be erased, not by oaths, not by secrecy, not by exclusion. Secret societies have tried for centuries. They built walls, wrote codes, swore loyalty, burned symbols. But all along, women shaped their decisions from outside the walls. Influence is not erased by exclusion. It is multiplied by it. The more men try to hide, the more obvious their fear becomes. The more they swear loyalty, the more fragile it looks. The more they exclude, the more central women become. Influence is not a variable. It is the constant. The game is not about removing it. The game is about admitting it. The closing truth. Across centuries, secret societies have whispered the same message. They fear scandal more than defeat, intimacy more than rivals, whispers more than wars. Their oaths, their rituals, their symbols, all of it was armor. Armor not against enemies, but against the women they pretended to ignore. And here lies the paradox. By excluding women, they confessed their power. By warning against intimacy, they admitted its strength. By guarding secrets, they revealed that secrets slip most easily through charm, silence, and desire. Every brotherhood is a confession. Every oath is an admission. Every ritual is a shadow cast by the power they could not name. What men's secret societies know about women, but never say, is this: that women have always been the unseen members of the lodge, that intimacy is more dangerous than war, that whispers outlast oaths, and that the influence they feared was never outside the door. It was always already in the room,